This is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. It's Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. It is 5:01 p.m. And the first order of business is a call to order by roll call. Mary Hartman,
Here.
Mike Lawson,
Here.
Rich Feely,
Here.
Carrie LaFleur,
Here.
Linda Escobedo has her hand up, so she's here. And Keith Bergman present. So that is all six of us. We are in attendance. We also have folks from a number of our other housing organizations here with us and other members of the public. So welcome. Next order of business is approval of minutes, and I had distributed a set from our May 14th meeting. Might have done it a couple of weeks ago, but I think I sent it again with the most recent packet. So I wonder if there is a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Mike. Is there discussion? All right, so on the motion to approve, we'll do a roll call vote. Mary?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Aye.
Let's see. Carrie was not present.
Yeah, I'm
Linda,
gonna abstain.
so abstain. Linda was not yet on the board. And Keith Bergman, aye. So that's 4 in favor. We'll call that 2 abstentions and none opposed. So those minutes are approved. Next item is trust funding. And in a couple of categories, pending state legislation and then local funding sources, fund balance, year-end reporting. So to start with pending state legislation, all eyes are on the Senate next, where the Affordable Homes Act will be taken up next week, the Senate President announced yesterday. As you know, the bill was passed by the act rather was passed by the full House of Representatives on June 5th. However, it did not include a real estate transfer fee, a local option transfer fee. So we're hopeful that the Senate bill might. I'd give us even odds at this point from, I don't know if Rich Feely from the coalition has any further updates. Last numbers I saw, it looked like of the 40 senators, maybe 20 were in the yes or maybe yes column. 5 opposed and 15 undecided. So there's sounds like there's a chance. Rich, any update you want to?
Yeah, as of an hour ago, that seems to be the situation. I would say the only thing that I heard that was sort of new and encouraging was that while Senator Spilka, Senate President Spilka, will not take a public position, she is thought to be leaning favorably towards it. And I think that there's some hope that the Senate may put this in and in hopes of having something that the House wants, that is not otherwise in the House bill. So hearing scheduled for next week sometime. I don't have an exact time yet.
Very good. And the bill is currently in Senate Ways and Means, and the hope would be that the transfer fee will be included in Ways and Means, a proposal which would be up for debate. I'm assuming that there will be some opportunity for amendments as well to the bill once it's on the floor, just as the House did. The House had hundreds of amendments that they considered, mostly, um, well, a good number of them were earmarks for particular projects. So something that we might want to think about. I just, for our record, I'd want to give a shout out to Rep. Carmen Gentile, who was one of our two state reps for Concord. And he was the only member of the House of Representatives to actually speak on the House floor in favor of the local option real estate transfer fee. So I appreciated that effort. He did there were a couple of amendments that were filed, but both were withdrawn, which would have put the transfer fee in the bill in some form, but so it's a lot of there's a lot of behind the scenes work that's being done this week or for the last several weeks, and contacting state legislators. I reached out to a friend of mine who's a state senator, and I've known him for 17 years and never asked him for anything, and asked him for this, and he said yes. So I appreciated that very much. I wanted to, so I wonder if there's any initial feedback from folks about where we stand with the real estate transfer fee.
Just hopeful.
Okay. What hopeful? Yeah, hopeful. It's the point that I made. I talked to Senator Barrett's chief of staff, and I touched bases with Mary and with Lee on the CHDC with an idea that I actually shared at the MCI Concord local advisory board meeting, and it was just because it had to do with property that they're looking.
And Nantucket freeze.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's cold there, he told us.
you're frozen, Keith.
He's starting to warm up.
I guess in the summer, the transmission capacity out of Nantucket may be overloaded.
Wonder if does anybody can somebody text him maybe?
Okay, I'm back.
He's
There he
back.
is.
You're back. Good.
Here I am. All right, very good. Must have been a bird flying overhead or something that caused it. But so what I just wanted to mention to this group is that the tough part for Concord, if we don't get a real estate transfer fee, would be that for a big project like MCI Concord, where there may be a provision that deals with. Oh, I see. Carrie, you have your hand up.
I do, Keith, but it's a question. It's not a comment, so.
Sure. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So I hope this wasn't covered before. We've got lots of fire trucks going by outside, and I was temporarily distracted, but so what we had heard, the reason for the opposition on the real estate transfer fee was that the dollar was too high, and I wonder, are we hearing, or is anybody hearing that there would be more support if there was a reduction in the value, and how do we feel about that?
We're not hearing that. As a matter of fact, the LoHa Coalition would like a lower floor. The idea originally was $1 million or the median regional price if lower. The opposition is basically the real estate industry, and I don't think we'd get more votes if we lowered the floor, but we're still hoping to get them. I mean, the fact is that it does nothing for the western half of the state, and one of the sponsors is Senator Comerford. So it wouldn't surprise me if she were to get language that would permit a lower floor elsewhere.
Thanks for the question and the answer. Bottom line is that the House had a lot of earmarks that it added in, which may or may not survive the Senate. But the issue for Concord, in my opinion anyway, is it will be difficult for us to hold up our end for whatever affordable housing might get built on a portion of MCI Concord ultimately, and at the adjacent Junction Village property owned by CHDC. So if we don't get the real estate transfer fee, maybe what we ought to get is an earmark. And since there were numbers like, I don't know, $6 million going to Chelmsford for a project and other things, that may be a large number, maybe 25 million, just as a placeholder. It's only a housing bond bill. It still requires an appropriation. So that idea has been floated. Typically, the legislators don't really ask us or touch bases with what earmarks they pursue. They just go and get them. But in this case, so here's a suggestion for Senator Barrett to consider if need be. Top priority is the real estate transfer fee, no question about it. But it might take the sting out of it if there's some money set aside. Mary.
Thanks, Keith. If we can't get the local transfer fee, is there some way we could work harder on getting the deed restriction on the Junction Village acres relaxed? And that way we wouldn't need as much money from any source in order to build some affordable housing there, as we've talked about before. So what could we be doing in that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I had pitched when I talked to Brendan Berger at Senator Mike Barrett's office, I had pitched the idea of we need an earmark for MCI Concord / Junction Village for funding. And while you're at it, we also need some language changes for the Junction Villages. I'm sorry, for the CHDC's Junction Village statute back in 2010, which requires all the housing be affordable. And Lee Smith had drafted language that I'd forwarded along to Senator Barrett's office, which would add market rate housing to the list of allowed uses: market rate, affordable housing, and open space. And Brendan Berger picked right up on that when he saw it. He said, okay, so what you're telling me is even if you get the real estate transfer fee, you still need this. And I said, right. We need the language changed. So that would be an important thing, I think, to take a position on. If one thing that the trust could vote to support it, a Senate earmark for funding affordable housing at MCI Concord and Junction Village, including allowing language for market rate and affordable units at Junction Village. I think that might be a good motion for us to take, if there's interest.
So moved.
Motion by Mary. Is there a second? I can't.
I'm thinking, but could you repeat it?
Yes. It's moved that the trust support a Senate earmark for funding of affordable housing at MCI Concord and Junction Village, including language allowing market rate and affordable units at Junction Village. So that's a motion by Mary, second by Carrie. Is there further discussion? Is there any discussion on that? Mike?
I have no real opposition to it, but I'm concerned about, is this the time for it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I wonder if it
Yeah.
is seen as waving the white flag.
Oh,
I would prefer.
Oh,
to
I
wait.
see. Yeah, procedurally. Yeah. Well, we'll take the vote. We'll keep it in our pocket. But I've already made I've already, the overture's already been made. The text has already been, offered to the senator's office for him to do it or not. And I think strategically, he would, offer it as an amendment only if the real estate transfer fee is not going to be considered.
Hmm.
But as Mary indicated, we do need the language for Junction Village, even in any event, I think. Stephanie.
And as
Oh, sorry.
as Lee
Okay.
supportive of that language
Yes.
change?
Yeah. 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 Lee wrote the language.
Uh,
Yeah. It was his language.
Can I ask
Stephanie.
also, where are they on the RFPs? I'm sorry not to know, but have they postponed it further?
yes.
No, it's
no.
still postponed to September, and
Oh, I know that.
stay tuned once September comes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd have to, from my observation, I think what might happen is that the CHDC sees that that it would be helpful to the Junction Village cause for them to hitch their wagon to MCI Concord Star, because that's where I think there is going to be significant activity and money, and and they're going to have that policy discussion amongst themselves, as is the MCI group. But I just foresee that it might make sense to plan 51 plus 12 acres, and what does that look like, as opposed to planning separately 51 acres and 12 acres.
And did Mike was agreeable to advancing this amendment?
Well, he's been asked, and I think it would help for him to see that there's a vote on record, and I'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation with him after tomorrow.
And would it be wise to follow up with the select board and to get their and Lee's organization as well? I mean, it sounds like I'm all for it, but if we're
Yeah.
gonna try to advance something, we might as well get all our ducks lined up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Keep
Yes, Stephanie.
to that very point, and I'm not sure if the timing works, but this is a good housing roundtable discussion. You'll have all the players in the room.
Yeah, the trouble is that the Senate will be I would say will be voting on this matter next week.
Okay, I wasn't sure of the timing.
Yeah, and so it's not there. It would, so if those groups have meetings and can take votes, that would be great.
Yeah.
I think we're actually in the standpoint, we're in the situation where the more voices, even if it's separate voices, that the Senator Barrett hears, that would be helpful. Rich, and then Mary.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm opposed to the idea of asking for a financial earmark. If there's a way to get the language change in, that's fine. But I mean, I could see them saying, okay, we'll throw Concord a bone with the prison. We'll throw one to Nantucket, and we won't do anything with a transfer fee. And my other problem is that money that we get for MCI is not usable anywhere else for buy downs or other projects. And so, yeah, we might get something there, but it gets in the way of scatter site housing or helping the housing authority buy down. So, I'm only in favor of the changing the language in the restriction on the Junction Village property.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Mary?
Actually, I made the motion, but I actually agree with Rich that I would be, what I would like to focus on would be relaxing the deed restriction. I did get off the phone just before this call with Brendan, and Senator Barrett is consumed right now with the climate
climate
action
bill.
Right, that
Yeah.
he's right. So we were trying to get him to come to address the MCI advisory board, and he declined because he's kind of overwhelmed. So I don't know if, to Mike's point about this being the right time, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit hesitant. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It'd be fine with me if you want to amend your motion, and we'll amend the second to just focus on the language change for Junction Village.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, is that okay, with the seconder, Carrie? Okay, thank you. All right, so our motion is for an earmark for, language allowing market rate and affordable units at Junction Village. Very good. Linda?
You muted,
Can't
Linda.
hear you. Can't hear you.
Thank you.
There you
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Can you read that language again, please? Because the first time you read it, I thought that needed a little bit more fine tuning.
Well, it's move that the trust support a Senate earmark for language allowing market rate and affordable units at Junction Village.
So we're talking about eliminating the earmark, correct? At this point?
Well, it would be an amendment, I guess, to support a Senate amendment instead of earmark.
There's no.
Because there can be the language, the motion was amended to take out the dollar figures, which is what the earmark would be. And leaving in the language changes, which would be an amendment. So we could ask them to support a Senate amendment for the language changes. Because in the House, there were both. There were proposed language changes, and there were in amendments, and there were other amendments that proposed dollar figures or earmarks.
And earlier you had said we could take the vote and hold it for the appropriate time.
Well, in this one, I would say we get it in. We need it in any event. Because it doesn't hinge on it affects the ability of the Junction Village to be developed, period. And it would give an option for the CHDC. It would give them more flexibility than they have now. And they would like that flexibility, and Lee wrote the language, so I'd like to support it.
I'm not opposed to the flexibility, and I understand what trying to accomplish there. I guess what I'm still having difficulty having clarity on, you've now specified it would be an amendment, but when would we be submitting that?
Immediately.
Immediately. Okay.
Okay, any further questions about the motion on the floor, which is to support a Senate amendment with language allowing market rate and affordable housing units at Junction Village? Carrie?
I just want to make sure we're comfortable with no specificity about the percent of market versus affordable. We're just going to leave it open-ended.
We don't have any the language the language that Lee Smith wrote did not specify.
I guess that, from my perspective, I guess that's fine. It's hard to imagine that that the state won't put some affordable housing requirement on the MCI Concord property, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all assume that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just stating the obvious then.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think whatever comes out of the MCI Concord process and whatever share of affordable versus market will probably dictate what the use of the adjacent property is, because they'll be planned together. Okay, any further comments before we take a vote? Liz Rust.
I mean, I'll just say that I brought up the same question that Carrie just brought up to Lee when we had a discussion. I thought that there should be some parameters around how much affordable housing should be there. I mean, now it's very clear because it's all, but yeah. I think that the the zoning for the larger property will be complex. Right, in terms of the affordable housing, it'll probably be an overlay zoning with different components and commercial and this and that. So it'll be hard to sort of tease out the different amounts of housing. So I thought that there was give up of from, like I come from the affordable housing agenda, right? Like that's what I come to. I thought there was some give up on affordable housing through this process.
There
is.
It's less than 100%. And
Well, it's unspecified less than.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So it's an open
But
door,
it's-
it's an open door less than, right?
yeah, it's at least 20,
Well,
if they adhere to the zoning.
no, well, you don't know.
And that's it for the overlay district.
Well, it's not part of the overlay district. It's not part of the MBTA now. So you just don't know.
Well,
You're making some assumptions, right? There's all
No.
sorts of assumptions that you could make.
No, Junction Village is part of the
Right, but
Junction Village, which is what we're this
Yeah,
amendment
yeah.
deals is
Fine.
in the and they need some kind of zoning approval. What
Mhm.
we're saying, it won't be, the deed won't be the impediment, but the zoning will be. So whatever zoning they need to get, what do you need to get in order to get a planned residential development?
But we don't have approval on the MBTA, which is, right?
Just saying, there's
No,
a lot
we
of
have-
land use, merging of parcels and zoning and all of that,
Yeah.
right? I'm just saying, a lot
Yeah,
of pieces
yeah,
in
that-
the air that are unresolved. So,
Yeah, HLC has approved 20% for
Yeah.
Concord.
yeah.
They just haven't, they've only communicated that by an email. And we'd prefer to see it in a decision that's on file somewhere, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we ready for a vote? Let's do on the motion for a Senate amendment for language allowing market rate and affordable units in Junction Village. On that motion, Mary,
Yes.
Mike?
Yes,
Yes, thank you. Rich,
Yes,
Carrie,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes,
and Keith, yes. So that passes unanimously. Thank you. And thanks for the discussion. That was an important conversation for us to have. Next, and I'll try to be brief here, under local funding sources. The next step for us will be a grant agreement with the Community Preservation Committee for the $500,000 that was approved by the 2024 annual town meeting. Yeah, and I've seen a draft agreement from them. It's going to be put in a final form. And it has two provisions that I wanted to mention here. First is that the CPC wants to allow us to be able to spend up to 10% of those grant funds for administrative purposes. And that's not something we asked for. In fact, we don't have that in our grant agreement for this year, and they want it to be in our agreement for next year. Apparently so that there is a potential funding source to tap for for some staffing increases that the CPC and the town are looking at to be able to better serve the needs of town boards, including the Community Preservation Committee and the trust. And I've had a follow-up conversation with town planner Elizabeth Hughes, who's putting this plan together. It's I defer to Kerry if she wants to talk about that. But my understanding is that they're putting together a proposal that would have the staff is for which would have duties for an additional, either I'm unclear if it's a part-time staff person or what, to be able to better serve the CPC, which is overloaded now, and the trust, which does not have any assigned staff at all. So that provision will be in our grant agreement, and I indicated my support anyway for if I said I would want to be of assistance if the trust could help the town solve whatever staffing issues that it has. My takeaway would be that that's committing to a recurring expense. So I hope it means that they're committing to a recurring revenue stream to us as we go back to the CPC year after year. So that's the first one, and we can talk about that. Rich?
Yeah, just quickly, I don't oppose the idea of using some money, but before I would vote for an actual appropriation, I'd like to clarify what this piece of a person is doing versus what RHSO does, or even if we would be better off, increasing our commitment to RHSO to get some of this work done. That's all. But I mean, I won't object to taking the money as long as we're not required to spend 10% on administration.
Right, we're not required to spend anything, even with that language in there, and we're not required to spend any of our grant funds on administration. They're just giving us I guess, mindful that the town is putting together a staffing plan, which as yet is not in a final form. What's the best way to do it? Who's the best to provide it? That this gives us some flexibility, I think, of how to offer those. They want us to be part of the solution, and so I'm for one, I'm happy to be part of that solution. All right, so Kerry.
Going forward, this is
Can't hear
for,
you.
can you hear me now?
No.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Sorry. I'm just wondering, did you say this was going forward for fiscal 26? Or this is the fiscal year we're going into?
This grant agreement that CPC and has before it is for fiscal 2025. So that's where they're proposing to put this language.
Okay, so I think
I don't have anything else.
Okay, we don't have an additional part-time or full-time staff planner in fiscal 25. My understanding was there was a concern that the staff assigned to CPC was spending more time than had in the past. And so there was an additional request, to increase the CPC contribution to account for the time that it was using, but there's no new position that's being proposed.
Yeah, that I only know what I'm told by staff and the CPC and now the town manager. Mike,
So, excuse me. This is for money that was approved at town meeting.
yes, the 500,000 that.
But I don't, how does the CP, I'm a little concerned about this. I don't think the town voted money to be used for administrative purposes. And I don't understand how the CPC has the ability to sort of amend, if you will, what was approved at the town meeting. So
Well,
I'm opposed
yeah,
to it. Sounds
yeah, the
weird.
statute allows up to 10% to be spent on admin, so there
On any-
perhaps.
On any CPC award.
Well, I guess the issue that I'm happy, I'll tell you what, based on this discussion, I'm happy to have the town meet with the chair of the CPC and myself to explain what the plan is and why we're being asked to do this. So I'm not asking for a vote tonight, but I'm just telling you what I've been told will be a condition in the grant agreement we're getting.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a lot of, I don't know if there's some mixed signals along the way or if we're getting our fiscal years wrong, but that's all I know. Linda and then Rich.
Yeah, I think Mike raises a very good question. I think up till now, we've assumed, and I think when I looked at the language, it's been a while since I looked at the language in the statute, that the assumption was that it was for the administration of CPC, the overall CPC work. So that I hope that comes up in any discussion that's held to revisit, because I think it's
Well,
a
it's 10, yeah, up to 10% of the total amount that's spent on CPC. So 10% of 2 million. Or 1.8 million.
So at town
This-
meeting,
this-
as Mike's referring to, at town meeting specifically, they pull out a line item in their recommendations
For
for
administration.
administration,
Right.
but this is not, this category is not one of them.
Yeah, these are all good questions. I have to say the original grant agreement we got a year ago had 10% for administration. And I asked for that, with your permission, I asked for that to be taken out because I'd prefer to spend the money on housing.
Yeah.
This year, I also, when they said we want to put it in, my initial reaction was no, I'd rather spend it on housing. And I was informed that there's something else going on here, which is beyond our control of looking at additional staffing. But so anyway, we don't need to resolve that tonight. When we have a final contract, grant agreement in front of us, we will be able to understand what's in it or what's not in it. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And frankly, on the larger issue, I would be concerned personally if the trust stood in the way of getting additional staffing for the trust. Because I can't do it. I just can't keep doing it at the level I'm doing it. So, we'll have that discussion at a future time. The other issue that is in the, let's see, the other issue that will be in our grant agreement has to do with the reporting requirement, which is a minor thing that the state, the CPC coalition has a particular form. And I shared a copy of what the completed form looks like, which we would submit, the trust would submit annually by September 1st. And with that information in that form, the town itself, on behalf of the CPC, would enter data electronically to the state, helping to fulfill that annual reporting requirement. We already submit on at least every 6-month basis progress status reports that I complete to the CPC, and we'll continue to do that. So those are the only changes that we have in our form. I see hands up from Linda and Rich.
Oops.
Rich?
Yeah, I feel strongly that CPC ought to, I mean, I don't know what they need to administer, but it should come off the top. And if we get 500,000 for housing and we can get some staff help, that's it. But I don't think money should be taken out of our 500,000 award. That should come out of, you know, when CPC is planning, come out of whatever the CPC allocation is, or potentially out of some of the return funds they have from projects that have underspent. So, you know, have that discussion, Keith, but I don't want to take money out of our.
I appreciate that, and I'll be glad to carry that forward. One of the reasons why I suggested, just without further ado, that look, we don't need to have admin funds taken out of the CPC grant because we've got $2 million in non-CPA funds, which if ever there was a need for, you know, to tap funds to help, you know, staff or support us, we've got more than enough non-CPA funds that we could dip into. There's no practical need to restrict the CPC funds in this way.
I would do it the other way around. I think your non-CPA funds are the more valuable funds to you because you can use them on higher income AMIs. Since the CPA funds are capped at 100% AMI, you know, you can never use them for workforce housing or anything like that. So I think your non-CPA funds are really valuable to the town. You don't get those very often in terms of, you know, if you have desires to create workforce housing.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. All the more reason why the two chairs plus the town need to get together and figure out what's going on here. So that would be helpful. All right. So last item under finance is we're required under our bylaw to submit a report at the close of every fiscal year to the select board. So I prepared or updated the spreadsheet that I've been keeping all along. Let me see if I can find to share that. Here it is. All right, do you see this? All right, so this is a running list of fund activities from the inception, and at the bottom of this page it shows there's a current uncommitted balance of $2,037,000. On page 2, this information is presented more programmatically, that shows what all the revenues have been coming in. There's a revenue figure that I've requested of the finance department, and that is if they could tell us what we get an allotment of earned interest income every 6 months or so. We last got it in January, and they've said that they'll have an allotment to make for us before the close of the fiscal year. my guess is it will, be over $20,000 that will be added in. And then the bottom part that we, and what that would serve to do is if it's $20,000 in interest income, then we would have $2,057,000 to start the new fiscal year. We then have $500,000 on top of that. This in the bottom half, it shows how the funds have been committed. We have two columns for non-CPA funds and CPA funds. We have committed all of the CPA funds that we got at town meeting last year, and we have and so the balance that we have of the over $2 million is all in non-CPA funds. So once we get that interest income figure from the finance team, we'll be able to submit a report to the select board. And I would like to get in the event that we don't meet until after July 1st, it would be helpful for me if we could have an authorizing vote to authorize the chair to submit to the select board the trust report for fiscal year ending June 30, 2024, pursuant to the bylaw section 7.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I'd say with the addition of interest earned through June 30th, I mean, that's a blank. I would assume that needs to be in,
Yes.
but otherwise I'm fine with that. So,
Yeah.
so moved with that suggestion.
With the addition,
I would add though, just for completeness, some language says based on the information presented by the chair at the meeting on June 18th. So it's not just a black hole, but we saw stuff.
Tracks back to a specific document.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
on June
And
18th.
might we also include the summary that went in the town annual report so that there's some narrative with this?
Who's going to write that?
Well, it's already in the annual town report that was submitted.
Well,
wasn't it?
it is through December 31.
I don't think this needs to be a very brief narrative. I don't think it's a long narrative report. It's just simply, referring them to the 2 pages that you just showed us.
I could certainly put together, I mean, the progress update that I submitted now twice to the CPC using 2 different forms has the narrative information that I could lift in a cover document to the select board. So I could do that.
Yeah. If you need help with that, please yell. I'm happy to.
Very okay. Thanks, Mike.
Any way I can.
Thank you. So who was the maker was there a motion?
Rich.
I think I did.
Motion by Rich. Okay. Is there a second on that motion, which includes the interest in income and
Mary.
second by Mary? Okay. Very good. So on that motion, we'll take a roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Aye.
Linda, Carrie, and Keith. Aye. So that passes unanimously. Thanks very much. All right. Moving quickly, just the time will come soon in the next few months, I think, for a next quarterly meeting of the Concord Housing Roundtable, and we can discuss this at greater length at a future meeting. Our last roundtable was in April. I'm thinking we should make sure that we meet sometime prior to September, because that's when the CPC's annual funding round applications are due. Last year, I think we met in August, early August. to just make sure that all the housing groups are on the same page of what applications should go in to the CPC. I think it would also be helpful for the trust to take a look, as we do on a regular basis, of which projects should be on our housing production plan priority project list, and what's the status of those projects, and when will they be needing funding. Things in the mix include the Assabet River Homes, 3 additional units. I know that they're discussing awarding the contract for a developer, and the 91B Main Street surplus state property is also in the mix. Liz and I and Lee had a meeting with Megan earlier today, talking through some next steps on that process to try to be able to acquire that property for a less than market value. There is a procedure that we can go through to do that. And other projects that we are on our radar screen. So it's an opportunity for us to see what we're going to do. As I say, we've got $2.5 million that we'll have as of July 1st. And we would want to be in agreement with all of our roundtable partners about how that money can best be spent, and which projects need, outside funding, or what funding can be pursued. It's my fond hope that maybe someday there'll be the opportunity to apply for the town ARPA funds for some of the projects on our radar screen. And so this would be, I think, a good thing for us to talk about at a roundtable, and that as the trust, we should be preparing for that roundtable at our upcoming meetings. So, any thoughts about that? On the agenda, I'd also mention things that we're keeping track of, which are on the MCI Concord closing and reuse, MBTA communities, multifamily zoning. I know the town was, I believe, was still waiting for their pre-review by HLC. Yeah, Mary.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to let you know that the select board last night started to formalize our goals for the year. And I just wanted to highlight some of the goals that are, I think, relevant to the housing groups. One of our goals was it was under the heading of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and specifically around housing stock, the diversity of housing stock. And we talked about having more workforce housing. We defined that as anything over 80% AMI, because I think we're in good shape as far as meeting the SHI. So that is an explicit select board goal. The other goal that we included in the list was to maintain the residential tax exemption at 10%, which has some relevance to diversifying our housing stock and the people that live in Concord. The other thing we talked about was redoing the West Concord master plan. And I'll have to admit, I don't really know what that means. Well, I don't know how it intersects with housing. I'm sure it does, but I don't know exactly how. And I will learn more. But so I just wanted to let you know that as our goals start to materialize and get, firmed up, those are the 3 areas that talk to housing.
Great. Thanks very much, Mary, for that. It's an important step in the life of the town annually to have the select board's goals, and I'm glad that I'm glad to know which, what the housing goals are, and that gives us some important guidance in how we carry out our duties. And it's workforce housing has been something we've been talking about, but it's very it's very helpful to know that that's a goal of the select board that we can.
Well, when
that we
you
focus on.
mentioned how should you spend the money, that's when my ears perked
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's just the sort of feedback that we're looking for,
Okay.
because we're, at some point, we're probably going to be at 50, nearly 16% on our subsidized housing inventory, and of course that number contains a lot of market rate housing as well as 80%. But we have been talking about focusing on workforce housing, and I know the CHDC has identified affordable housing for them. Their upper limit is 150% of AMI, so that's helpful. Yes, Liz.
So I'll just put a plug in. I see that Ed's here and Stephanie's here, but also so it's housing on both sides. So the very low income on the housing authority and
Okay.
also the workforce housing. I think that Concord's in good shape for that 80% affordable housing. But again, the very low income and the workforce both. So I think that, it would be an opportunity to increase housing authority inventory perhaps as well.
Good point.
Very good. Yeah, that's collectively between Mary and Liz, that's very helpful strategic advice that we're getting. So appreciate that direction. Thank you. All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you, Liz.
Okay. Do we have any updates? We've got Housing Partners here. Any updates that anyone wants to share about production projects that they're working on? Ed Lerner.
Yeah, just going back to the CPC discussions that we've been having.
Yeah.
And as far as the administrative fee, I know both Liz and you, Keith, we were asked. We asked you if you needed additional funds, and you said you didn't. So I'm not sure that's part of the discussion there, but we're going through the grant agreements and MLUs for all the different projects. So that came up on that. And so I think we're working closely to make things work. And you guys were, basically we were worried that we were overwhelming you, and you both said no, you can handle it. So.
Right. Thanks, Ed. And the one point that I did that we haven't mentioned today that has been mentioned to the Community Preservation Committee was the $240,000 that was turned back by the Housing Authority for the Giroux property. That I made a pitch asking the CPC to reuse those funds for housing, as they had done with Christopher Heights, and I did not get a commitment. I didn't hear much sympathy for putting it in reusing those funds for housing. So that I think we'll need to continue to work on that.
You did the right thing to do that. Do you want a vote of the trust to request that money be provided to the Trust for Affordable Housing?
Could you repeat the question?
I said, do you want I do think that money should be allocated to housing. It's not like we've ever gotten more than 20 or 30% of the pile, if you will. And would it help to have a vote from the trust to say, yes, that money was intended for housing, Habitat got it built, we still need housing, we want the money.
I remember the discussion that was held when the money was turned back, and that I was asked, what did we want to put this in a housing reserve? And I said, I had my own opinion on it, but eventually I think Stephanie would know more about this, but we talked to Burton about that money being definitely put into a housing reserve. So I think the CPC was on the board on that part.
My recollection, Ed, is that it was being earmarked for housing. I think we should double check, can even double check our housing minutes, because I think we talked about that, and that was the decision. So
Yeah,
That was the decision, that was the decision of the CPC.
the decision of the CPC, we
Okay.
as a group said, we wanted it to be for housing, and I think the circle back was that was in fact the case. So we just need to triple check that.
Yeah, that would be welcome news. The meeting I attended, and I attend most of them, had
Yeah.
a different outcome. So, and in any event, I think it would, yeah, so.
So
if-
can I just, I'm just
if
sorry,
you
I'm
could-
sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just
Yeah,
wondering
please,
if
go ahead.
Ed, as a member of CPC, maybe you can triple check that for this group.
Yeah, my recollection, and I will check it, was that we discussed what to do with the money after it came back. And they asked me what I, as the housing, appointee, what I wanted to do with it. And I said I couldn't really, I had my own opinion, but I wasn't about to make a decision for the board. So I went back to the board, and Stephanie and Jennifer, confirmed with Burton that it would go into a housing reserve, much like the Junction Village, money.
Great,
So I'll
that
check,
would be
I'll check with Jennifer and on that too. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Carrie,
And I assume most of you know this, but the CPC funding, it's really formula driven. So 30% has to be set aside for housing. So if that appropriation authorization was for housing, it has to go back into a housing reserve. It doesn't go back into an unreserved amount. And that's honestly, the finance staff can go back and take a look at that and verify where that came from. The second thing I would say is the CPC can't then send that money, that housing money over to the trust. That has to go through town meeting.
yeah.
Just.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, and I think the best time for us to have a group discussion about that would be a housing roundtable held prior to September. Because then the question will be, do the housing groups collectively get, say, $500,000 that the trust asked for each year, plus 240,000 that was turned back for that wasn't needed to complete another housing project, because both of those matters would need to go, forward to the next town meeting. Carrie?
Can I correct myself? It's 10%, a minimum of
10%,
not 30%.
right.
And Keith, is there a sort of master timeline to work toward what we need to pull together for CPC in terms of formal applications for those dollars?
Well, they've already announced their application. They're to do the first,
It's
as far as I
open.
know, they're due the
Okay.
first week of September. They always are.
Yep. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
realize.
Yeah,
Okay. So September 1st-ish is our deadline for proposals.
it's been the first Friday in September.
Okay.
Unless there's a reason to move it up, perhaps. So,
Friday, September
very-
13th.
Yeah.
Keith,
okay, great. Thank you. Linda,
yeah, if I could just comment briefly on the housing reserve, typically it will be an important discussion, I think, to have about how that housing reserve will be used, whether it's in addition to, the 10% minimum that has to be met. But typically, how the CPC has used those reserves is part of whatever award they're making.
Right, I'd say with the sole exception of when the Christopher Heights funds were turned
with-
back,
with that
that
exception.
was.
Yeah, with that
that,
exception.
Yeah, so I'd kind of like to think anytime funds are turned back that have uh, 6 figures or more, that they go back to the original, and it was housing, goes back to the original purpose. But we can, it's on our radar screen now, and I think we can have a further discussion with the CPC and with the housing groups, and hopefully come to a group think about how much money we can go after for funding for a town meeting next year. Stephanie?
Yeah, I was just thinking too, to the extent the Housing Authority gave those dollars back to CPC, does it also mean that for whatever year that was earmarked for, it didn't meet the housing threshold? You know what I mean? It didn't meet the 10% or whatever it was. That maybe
Yeah,
that under the percent allocation. Just wanted to throw that out.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good point, that if those funds were used in a given year, in the year they were awarded to satisfy, without those funds, did that year have at least 10% of the funds
Right.
spent for housing? Good
Right.
question. And
Yeah.
that's why you wouldn't want to, pull the card out from that
Yeah.
house of cards.
Right.
Yeah.
And then one more, just quick, just so you can move on. I just wanted to give another, introduce the other priority from the Housing Authority related to dollars needed. And Keith, I know you were part of our last board meeting, but we talked about the sewer assessment for Old Bedford Road, and looking for the state to help us with dollars to do that sewer assessment. And to what extent did the was the earmark that the state had appropriated, perhaps the dollars we could use for to get the sewer looked at there, so that we could build additional homes on Old Bedford Road? Or is that something that perhaps the town could help us with? It could be incremental dollars. It could be looking at the analysis of what might happen to the MCI Concord water treatment facility. I just wanted to mention that it isn't incremental new housing directly in terms of the dollars we're looking for. It helps us get there, though, in terms of really understanding the possibilities related to sewer hookup.
Very good. Thanks for raising that, Stephanie, because I think that's an example of a project where the more all of the housing groups can know what all of the projects are that the various housing entities want to pursue, the better we can help figure out, well, what's the best way, which are the priority projects, which are the best way to use trust funds, CPC funds, other funds that we can go after. So that's a good project, I think, to put on our collective radar screen, and that we can discuss at the roundtable. So thanks for that. Are there any other updates? Ray Andrews.
Yes, well, you can count on the CHDC wanting some significant funds over the next year or two for Estimate River Home. I mean, excess of $1 million.
Right. Thanks. Hopefully not more than 1.5 million, but because that's
Yeah.
that's sort of
number-
what we
That
set
number has
aside.
been bandied about, yes.
Yeah. And if there are other projects as well that are on the radar screen for the, next, not just the coming year, but in, future years, those things would be helpful to have on our radar screen as well. So thank you. Thanks, Ray. Liz.
So, annually, the CHDC will request another bit of money for the small grant program.
Okay.
So just so that's on your radar. So the first year was a 2-year, and then with the understanding that every year would be a 1-year ask. So they always had a year.
Okay.
2-year piece there. It's a small amount, but just to let you know that would be coming also. And then I will, coming up in the next couple of weeks, start to pull the group for the roundtable scheduling, which is the hardest part about the whole meeting, is to actually schedule it. No, having the meeting is really nothing compared to that. So just letting everyone know here, really looking probably for that later part of August.
Very
So,
good.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. While we have all of our housing partners on on the call, I just want to say that we've adopted a system like the Community Preservation Committee has of project update reports, status reports, and your grant agreements. I think require the first report by now, and so if you, and I know we're all busy, but if we could start seeing those project status reports, that our vision is that just as the CBC posts their status reports on their website, we want to be able to post our status reports on our website so the voters know which projects we're funding and how those projects are coming along.
Yeah.
So, and if there are any questions about that, or we'll be happy to work through it. The form is basically the same as the CBC's form, which I know you're all familiar with. So,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Keith, I just wanted to mention that for the production roundtable, that if we try to ask all of our housing partners to come prepared to at least talk about what they might present to the CPC for funding, so that if possible, we can coordinate what we're doing and we don't run into the, little bump in the road we did last year. So that would be helpful.
Okay, good point. So we'll have as an agenda item on the roundtable for each housing group to report what CPC application they are thinking about. Very good. The only other area just to mention, Chapter 40B updates, the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing on residences at Thorough is continued to July 25th at 7 p.m. And of course, the Novo was issued. Do we see any signs of life? Anyone have any ideas? Their building permit application about to be pulled for Novo, or is there any knowledge of what they're doing? So, all right, well, we'll wait to hear. Very good. And I'll mention it as well, if there's anything that the housing groups can do to help push the case with the Boston Region MPO for the extension for the bridge that's being constructed to Baker Ave from the West Concord MBTA commuter rail station. I know that would access $8 million. I don't know if that's been programmed on the Boston Region MPO yet. I think the 25% design plans were going to be completed by about now, which would be the trigger that would allow it to be programmed. So we're all happy to help support that with the Boston Region MPO if there's something that we can do. Mary.
Keith, is that a staff? Would staff is the one who actually set?
Staff would be doing that. I think Elizabeth Hughes is the key person, but I think routinely, I think I had shared with folks that some months ago I saw that the Sudbury Select Board had already sent something in supporting their further extension of the Bruce Freeman through their town, and that it's getting programmed on the Boston Region MPO. So that might be a prompt for all of us to help too, if letters help, and maybe a staff report on where that project stands with the Boston Region MPO.
Great.
Great. Ann, is there any public comment? All right, well, thanks all for being with us. We should schedule a next meeting of the trust. I would suggest sometime in July. We typically meet on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And I would suggest July 16th. If that works for folks, Tuesday, July 16th at 5 o'clock.
I can't do it then. I'm out of the country. I could do it the 23rd or the 30th if that worked for other people. But, obviously I shouldn't drive the decision.
So the 23rd would work for you?
Works for me, yes.
Okay, Can't-
Available on the
Mike?
23rd. I'm not available on the 23rd, but I am on the 30th.
okay.
And I'm not available on the 23rd or the 30th. So
All
how
right.
about that? Or how about that
So-
for planning?
So
So
let's
good
see,
luck
what
to you, Keith.
what about the 9th? Because I don't want to wait till August to authorize signing a grant agreement with CPC. I'd like to get those funds.
The 9th works for me.
Yeah, the 9th of July.
Rich?
Doesn't work for me. It's part of the same trip.
Okay,
Just pick a date and you'll be down a guy. No big deal.
Yeah, right, yeah.
yeah,
It
so
looks like it's
I'll go
better
back to the 16th. I'll go back to the
Yeah.
16th. How many can attend on the 16th? Okay, all right, we have a winner. We will do the 16th. And we will miss Rich, but he won't
So
miss
be it.
us, 'cause he'll be at some exotic place, not thinking of us. But bring your Concord Bridge though.
Well, we've already taken it to 79 degrees north. I don't think.
Very good. All right, so well, thanks for your patience today. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Mike, second by Rich. And on a roll call vote, Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
aye.
Linda,
Hi.
Harry,
I
and Keith, aye. So we are adjourned at 6:19 PM. Thanks, everybody.